What happens when the world's most successful automaker suddenly finds itself losing customers, losing market share, and losing its place at the top? In the late 1920s, Ford Motor Company faced exactly that crisis. Chevrolet had overtaken Ford as America's best-selling automobile. The Great Depression was devastating the economy. Competition was growing stronger every year. And inside Ford Motor Company, a father and son were often battling over the very future of the automobile they were creating. Yet somehow Ford survived. In fact, some of the most iconic automobiles in history emerged during this time period. The Model A, the 1932 Ford V8, the Lincoln Zephyr, and the first Mercury. But who really deserves the credit? Was it Henry Ford's engineering genius and financial discipline? Or was it Edsel Ford's vision, styling leadership, and understanding of what customers actually wanted? By the end of this video, you may discover the Ford Motor Company's survival wasn't the work of one man, but actually the result of two very different minds whose strengths were equally important.
So today we're going to explore one of the most fascinating stories in automotive history. Did Edsel Ford really save Ford Motor Company? Let's find out.
By the early 1920s, it seemed impossible that Ford Motor Company could ever be challenged. The Model T dominated the world's roads. Henry Ford had revolutionized manufacturing. Ford was producing millions of automobiles while competitors were struggling for their very existence. But success created a dangerous problem. Henry Ford became convinced that the Model T remained exactly what people wanted. Meanwhile, General Motors was adapting. They were changing. And under the leadership of Alfred P. Sloan, GM introduced a strategy that would reshape the automotive industry forever. Customers could move up through a family of brands: Chevrolet, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, Buick, Cadillac. Every income level had an option. Chevrolet also introduced features and styling updates that appealed to increasingly sophisticated buyers. Meanwhile, Ford continued building the aging Model T. Customers began leaving, and by 1927, Chevrolet had overtaken Ford as America's best-selling automobile. For the first time in decades, Ford was no longer king. Inside the company, one person clearly saw the danger: Edsel Ford. Unlike his father, Edsel closely followed design trends and customer preferences. He understood that automobiles were becoming more than transportation. People wanted style, comfort, performance, status. Many historians believe Edsel was among the strongest advocates for replacing the aging and outdated Model T. Reluctantly, a stubborn Henry Ford finally agreed. Production of the Model T ended in 1927. Ford shut down factories and spent millions of dollars retooling for an entirely new car. The result was the Model A. The Model A offered modern styling, improved brakes, more power, better driving characteristics, and a wide range of beautiful body styles. Edsel's influence could be seen throughout the vehicle's appearance and presentation. The public response was immediate. Americans lined up to see the new Ford. Nearly 5 million Model A's would be sold. The Model A didn't just replace the Model T, it restored confidence in Ford Motor Company at a critical moment. Yet another challenge was looming, and that challenge was the Great Depression. During this period, several key figures would help shape Ford's future. One of the most important was Eugene Bob Gregory. Gregory had served in the U.S. Navy and possessed extraordinary artistic talent. Edsel Ford recognized his abilities and brought him into Ford's design operations during the early 1930s. Gregory would eventually become Ford's first true chief stylist. His influence would be enormous. Many of Ford's most beautiful automobiles would emerge from his drawing board. Edsel understood something that Henry often overlooked. Great design could sell cars. Gregory would become one of Edsel's most trusted collaborators. Another critical figure was Harold T. Youngren, one of Ford's leading engineers who helped develop future products and improved manufacturing efficiency during a very difficult period. But perhaps the most important team of all was quietly working on a project that almost nobody outside Ford knew about: a revolutionary new engine. As the Great Depression deepened, Ford needed something truly dramatic, something his competitors didn't have. Henry Ford believed he had the answer: an affordable V8 engine for the average American. At the time, V8 engines were generally reserved for expensive luxury automobiles. Most affordable cars relied on 4-cylinder or 6-cylinder inline engines. Many Ford engineers believed Henry's idea simply couldn't be manufactured economically. The project was considered nearly impossible, but a stubborn Henry Ford refused to quit. Behind the scenes, engineers worked in secrecy, developing what would become the legendary Flathead V8. While Henry Ford focused intensely on engineering the engine, Edsel Ford focused on the automobile that would surround it. Together, they were unknowingly creating one of the most important and iconic cars in automotive history, a car that would eventually have its own iconic name. When the 1932 Ford was introduced, the American public had never seen an automobile anything quite like it. Known today as the Deuce Ford, it featured the world's first single-casting, mass-produced, and amazingly affordable V8 engine. For ordinary Americans, performance once reserved for just luxury cars suddenly became attainable. The new Ford delivered more power, higher speeds, better acceleration, a modern appearance, and a tremendous value. Edsel played a major role in refining the styling and overall presentation of the new Ford. The vehicle looks sleek, balanced, and modern. The famous 1932 grille remains one of the most recognizable designs in automotive history. The Flathead V8 immediately became a public sensation. Although Depression-era conditions limited sales, the V8 gave Ford something it desperately needed: a unique identity. Chevrolet could compete on price, but now Ford could compete on performance. This distinction would help Ford Motor Company survive some of the toughest economic years in American history. Many historians argue that without the Flathead V8 and the 32 Ford Motor Company might have struggled far more during the Depression. While Edsel and his team focused on products, Henry Ford contributed something equally important: financial stability. Henry disliked borrowing money. He distrusted banks, and he disliked debt. This often frustrated executives who wanted faster expansion. Yet, when the Depression struck, Ford's conservative financial philosophy became a tremendous advantage. Many of his competitors carried large debt loads. Some disappeared entirely. Ford survived largely because it entered the Depression in a strong financial position. Henry's caution provided the foundation. Edsel's innovation provided the future. Both were necessary. Ford Motor Company had acquired Lincoln way back in 1922. But beginning in 1928 and all during the 1930s, Lincoln truly found its identity. Much of the credit belongs to Edsel Ford. Edsel appreciated fine design, architecture, and luxury products. He wanted Lincoln to compete directly with Cadillac and Packard. Working closely with Bob Gregory, Edsel pushed Lincoln toward more elegant styling and higher levels of refinement. The result was a dramatic improvement in the brand's reputation. Lincoln became attracting customers who wanted luxury combined with modern design. But Edsel wasn't finished. His most influential Lincoln was yet to come. If you enjoy automotive history, forgotten stories, and the people who shape the transportation world, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you also enjoy exploring the history of old automobiles, you may want to check out my book titled Rust Buckets that's available on Amazon. The book is filled with photographs of forgotten automobiles that once traveled America's roads before being left behind by time. You'll find links in the description below. As the Great Depression deepened and dug its heels into the world's economy, Lincoln introduced the Zephyr in 1936. Designed largely under the direction of Edsel Ford and stylist Bob Gregory, the Zephyr looked like it came from the future. Its streamlined body reflected the growing influence of aerodynamics. Its flowing body line stood apart from traditional luxury cars. The Zephyr featured a lower profile, integrated fenders, modern proportions, a sleek appearance unlike anything else on the road at that time. Even more importantly, it was priced below traditional Lincolns. For many buyers, the Zephyr represented attainable luxury. The public immediately fell in love with it. Almost immediately, the Zephyr became Lincoln's best-selling model. In many years, it accounted for the vast majority of Lincoln sales. Without the Zephyr, Lincoln's future would have been uncertain. Instead, it became one of the division's greatest success stories at a time when the world's economy was hammered. By the late 1930s, Ford faced another strategic problem. General Motors had mastered the concept of market segmentation. A customer could start with Chevrolet and move upward through multiple brands. Ford had a huge gap. There was Ford, then Lincoln, then nothing in between. Customers wanted something more prestigious than a Ford, often left for Buick, Oldsmobile, Pontiac, Chrysler, or DeSoto. Edsel understood exactly what was happening. His solution to the problem was simple. It was Mercury. Introduced in 1939, Mercury occupied the critical middle price market. Mercury offered more comfort, more power, more features, more prestige, yet it remained affordable. The strategy was brilliant. Instead of losing customers as their incomes increased, Ford dealers could keep them with the Ford family. Mercury quickly became successful and strengthens Ford's competitive position heading into the 1940s. As Europe moved toward war, Ford entered the 1940s in far better condition than it had been in 1927. The company now had a modern Ford lineup: the legendary Flathead V8, a revitalized Lincoln division, the successful Lincoln Zephyr, the new Mercury brand, a stronger design organization under Bob Gregory, and a customer base that once again viewed Ford as an innovator. The transformation had taken more than a decade, and much of it reflected on the combined strengths of Henry and Edsel Ford. At the beginning of this video, I asked a simple question: did Edsel Ford save Ford Motor Company? And the answer is both yes and no. Without Henry Ford's financial discipline, Ford might never have survived the Great Depression. Without Henry's determination to build the Flathead V8, Ford would have lacked one of the greatest competitive advantages in automotive history. But without Edsel Ford, the story becomes much harder to imagine. No Model A modernization, no design revolution, no Bob Gregory, no Lincoln Renaissance, no Zephyr, and no Mercury. And perhaps no path forward in a rapidly changing marketplace. Henry Ford gave Ford Motor Company its foundation. Edsel Ford gave it its future. The company survived because one man understood engineering and financial discipline, while the other understood customers, design, and where the automobile industry was heading next. Together, despite their many disagreements, they guided Ford Motor Company through one of the most difficult periods any American corporation had ever faced. And that may be the greatest lesson of all. Sometimes success doesn't come from one vision. Sometimes it comes from the tension between two very different visions working towards the same goal. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Have a wonderful day, and you all be blessed.